Is the deal made by President Trump and Kim Jong-un legally binding?
That's the big question. Wendy Patrick is here now for more on today's Inside the Law. Wendy, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, whoa, what a day, huh? What a day. The summit is now over. So looking at this from a legal standpoint, what happened?
Right. Well, from a legal standpoint, not much in terms of what's legally binding, but this is an enormous first step. This
Sure.
it was almost surreal to see those two men standing together from the very beginning when they shook hands to the photo op. But we've got to have follow-up, not just a photo op. And that's one of the things everybody's talking about this morning is what did they say that actually is going to be able to have some legal value in the future? Let me give you a couple ideas. One of the things they agreed upon, or I should say that Kim conceded to, is complete denuclearization. But remember, what we want is complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. So we're not there yet. One of the other things that people are talking about is the fact that 3 months ago, we were on the path to war. Now, at the very least, we're on the path to peace. This is really the farthest that Kim has traveled. Remember that before, about 6 months ago, the only American he'd met with was Dennis Rodman, who, by the way, was there and has gotten a lot of airtime.
And was very emotional.
Very emotional, that's right. But this is significant on so many different levels that it's a victory in terms of a first step moving forward to eventually what we would like to see conceded by North Korea.
So there was no legal binding. This was just a talk.
That's right, Shelley. It wasn't a peace treaty. There's a long way to go between a talk and an agreement. Remember, there was a written agreement, but just a written agreement does not have the force of law, okay? But it was something. It was so much more than we had before. One thing both sides have conceded is this is the first of several different layers of talks, no doubt incorporating some of the teams that are working with the presidents of both countries. And, you know, many people are saying, gosh, for Kim, it was a win just showing up because it gives him some legitimacy that he's never had before on the world stage.
This is a vicious regime.
That's
you
right.
can't forget that, what they've done in the past in their history, going back to his father and his grandfather. This is their reputation. This is what they do. The president comes out and says he trusts Kim. And that's the question the world is asking. How can you trust Kim Jong-un?
You can't. Trust has to be earned. And that's something the president knows. I mean, the art of the deal, he doesn't trust every deal maker he deals with. It was something, it sounded good, and I'm sure that if he had to rethink it, he would say the same thing, that trust has to be earned. But here's an interesting twist to this time in Singapore that maybe the president is thinking about. Kim went out on the town the night before this meeting. He got to see the westernized world and capitalism in action that no doubt he'd never seen before. This is something that's dangled by the president as what might be possible if he agrees to complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. So there's actually quite a bit of bargaining power the president might be thinking of when he talks about he's trusting in Kim wanting to venture forward in his own best interests, which would be denuclearization in exchange for all of this.
It was a calculated move. Would this be the same thing of that he was honored to shake his hand and meet him? Because that's what the president did say, he was honored to meet him.
Right. Some of the language some people are saying was regrettable and perhaps should have been rethought. It probably was an honor for the president, but given the terrible human rights violations that President Trump would concede are definitely there, it maybe was one of those things where at the time, it was the best things that he could have said. But in retrospect, obviously, our president recognizes there's a long way to go on the human rights front before they can actually say that they're pleased with anything going on in North Korea.
I know you mentioned, Wendy, that this is not a legal binding anything at this point, but this was what they deemed a comprehensive agreement, but it was only 2 hours, and they each had their full teams of diplomats and this and that. What do you think is in this comprehensive agreement? Is it okay? Well, you'll invite him to the White House next, which is going to be even more bizarre than this meeting. Moving forward, what does that comprehensive agreement even mean?
Okay, I'm going to use I often don't quote Dennis Rodman, but I'm going to quote him this one time. He talked about the opening of a door, right? That's what he's been saying for years. This was that. It was a door opening, it was rapport building, and I don't know about you guys, but I was actually amazed at the rapport that was visually
Right?
apparent between
The
these
body
two
language,
men.
the
Yeah.
smiles.
The body language, the smile, and it got better as the day went on. But it doesn't mean anything. The three of us can agree to anything. There's
Yep.
no legal binding force until and unless they actually reach that point. But you got to start somewhere. And this was, I don't want to call it a meet and greet because that detracts from its significance. It was
Right.
highly significant. But it certainly wasn't the kind of comprehensive agreement that hopefully is on the horizon in the future. That's what we're working towards.
I don't remember before hearing Kim Jong-un's voice. And in that meeting, the lunch meeting when it started, before they kicked the media out, you heard him speak.
I felt
don't
the same
remember.
way. We had this conversation when Jared Kushner finally spoke. You might remember. It's the same thing. Is it
Yeah.
really kind of it humanized him in a sense. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't take away from the horrific abuses that continue to take place in that country. But you got to start somewhere. So
You gotta
that's
start somewhere.
that's the flip side of this.
And the president did mention, look, as much as this seems strange and this is a horrible regime, we've had past enemies with whom we've made allies. I mean, this happened in World War II with Japan and Germany. We're now allies with Japan and Germany.
That's right.
And at some point, you have to make good and make friends with people. Otherwise, what's the other option?
And Raul, that's the counter argument.
Right.
Is at the very least, from a macro
Yeah.
level, we went from the
Yeah.
path to war to the path to peace, and
Right.
we're going to continue.
And
along
past
that path.
enemies can become allies.
That's true. Well said.
It's going to be, I mean, let's get Dennis Rodman and see what he has. I mean, honestly. it's
We
just-
heard him again this morning. I'm sure
It's
he's going to continue
historic,
to
no
speak.
matter what your political slants may be.
That's
this
right.
was fascinating to watch and an historic moment.
History in the making.
My goodness. Wendy, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you're here to kind of put a little perspective.
We're always happy she's here, right? All right, 7:21, still ahead.